This week in CIST 1510, we'll look at Chapter 12. This will be our last uh, lab discussion in this Analyze, Correct, and Improve. We're going to look at improving a web page with Bootstrap. Now, Bootstrap is a popular framework for our CSS. It's used to develop rapid, mobile-first websites, responsive websites. This is something that is a free and open source framework. This is something that really, like I said, is for the mobile first front-end web development. A couple things that's contained into Bootstrap include your CSS, HTML, and optionally you could have JavaScript included as well. These allow you to create things such as your buttons, your forms, navigation, and other types of uh, interface. So we're going to start off looking at our web page. So when we look at our web page, this is what we have to begin with. Okay, so we have no CSS that's been applied. We'll look at our heading section. We'll see that we have no head in our head area, no links to a CSS. So we will be creating a CSS. We'll be linking this to a Bootstrap framework as well. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put our name in the index HTML file, and the file name, and the current date. So then I'm also going to link this into Bootstrap. I'm going to come right back to that because I'm going to go down here first to the footer element and add my name to the footer. We'll rearrange this so we can see a little bit better. So I'll come down to the footer element and I'm going to add my name to the footer element. Now back in the head section, I am going to link this to a Bootstrap. The file will seem fairly long. And they give you the link here as well. So you're going to link this exactly as you do a link into a style sheet, except we're going to put this web address in here as well. The next step we're going to look at is we're going to add these classes to our nav elements. Before we do that, we're going to just look at our page now that we have linked this to a Bootstrap framework. We'll see that we do have some updates here. All right, so we now have linked it to, like, consider this kind of an online pre-built CSS. Next, we're going to go to our nav element, and we're going to add these classes to our nav elements. So we'll scroll down until we see our nav element. Okay, here. And then here we're going to add the class of navbar, navbar-expand SM, and navbar-light. So we're just going to put this within inside this tag. We'll run this to the check. We'll see the update here. So now we see that we do have navigation been added to the top. All right, so the next couple of steps here are going to be, we're going to be adding things to the anchor elements and to our list item elements. So you want to make sure that you get the correct one in each one. So we're going to add a nav item class to each list item. And then we're going to add the nav link to each anchor element. So when we look at our navs, so each list item is going to have the class of nav item added to it. So I'm going to go ahead and add all of these into my list item. Then I'm going to prefer to come back and do the anchor elements. So in the anchor elements, I'm going to add a nav link. I'll add this to each one. We'll run our check here. It is easy when you're doing this, especially if you're adding this to multiple items, copy and paste to make sure that you have everything done correctly, because it is easy sometimes with the names of these classes as close as they are, such as nav link, nav item, and the way the text is jumbled, it is sometimes easy to put the wrong one in. So if you do have an issue with that, passing that, go back and check it and make sure that um, you have the correct place, correct code in the correct place, the correct class for nav items with the list items, and the nav links in with the anchors. All right, so next we're going to go up to our header element. And in our header element, we're going to add the class of Jumbotron Fluid, and then Text Center. We'll scroll down to our header. And we're just going to add these classes. We'll run through the check. And it's okay if you do on these, if you copy and paste this into what you created class. So we'll look and see how this affects our image now. So now that we have a background, we have the different classes been applied. So now we're going to go look at the anchor elements within the header, and we're going to add the button primary, and the button large. So still in the header element. So we'll find the anchor element inside the header. This, and now we have to actually add a role attribute with the value of the button to the anchor element within the header. This is all going in the same tag. I'm just going to put this one at the end. We'll run the check. Okay, so that's passed. So once again, I've added these classes that it tells me in here to add. And then I've added the attribute for role, or excuse me, the role attribute, and I've put the value of button. So we'll look at our page here. So when we refresh this, we'll see that we now have a getting started or get started button in here as well. All right, so next we're going to go into and we're going to add the text primary class value to each anchor element that's wrapped within a list item within the nav elements. Again, we're going back to our navigation, back to where we put the anchor and put the nav link. So we're just adding a second class here. So inside each one of these, I'm going to add the text primary class. And we'll see the change happen in our navigation. So now we have the text primary. Now we're going to change all the column small 6 class values to the column small 3. Okay, this will be located back down in your main class. In your main class, you'll see your divs, you'll see our classes. So all we're going to do here is change these to 3. So we're just changing the value here, changes the classes. We'll see that the way our layout here will change as we'll now have this laid out across the page. So we'll run the check on that. So now we'll go down to the footer, and I'm going to add the background primary and the P3 class value to the class within the footer element. So we'll see right now we can't really have much information in the footer there. So we did use the Jumbotron Fluid and Text Center. In here, we're going to add 2 more classes. We're just going to put them right next to the other ones. We'll see that now we have the footer area. Okay. So going back to this, let's take those back out for a second. So that our information is not visible here. Even though we highlight it, it does show up. Okay, that's because we have white text on white background. So this is just a bad principle design. If we were not going to add the background like we were just doing, we want to make sure this text isn't white. We don't want to use the same color or the same shades of color on the same background. So we'll put those back in. We'll run our check. We'll update this. Because now we're going to create an external style sheet. Because the style sheet is going to be named styles.css. It has to go within the CSS folder. And in here, we're going to first put a comments for our name, the date, and the file name. Okay, same information here. If you want to just copy this information here and change it, you can. Now to create a CSS, once again, we're going to go to the folder actions, click new file. We're going to name this styles.css and click create file. And then first thing we're going to do is we're going to put a comment in with our name, the file name, and the date. Okay, one of our last steps, and this is the biggest step we've got, we're going to create a style rule for the background class, or the background -light -blue class, and we're going to set the background color. So in here, we're going to start off by assigning this to the class. We're going to set the class name, and inside our curly brackets, we're going to set the background color. And here we're going to set it to CCEFF. Okay, so now we've created that style sheet. Still is not going to work yet because we have not linked it back to our index. So in here, we're going to now create the link to our index file. So back up in the head, I'm going to put this right underneath my bootstrap. So I'm going to create the link. Then I've got to add the background -light blue class value to a couple elements. One is the header element. I'm going to come down to my header element. And in here, I'm going to add the background light blue. Then you'll also see that in here, I'm going to add it to a couple of div elements. So I'm going to put it in the div that creates the second column within the main element, and then the fourth column within our main element. So this is my first column. So I'm going to add it to my second, and then to my fourth. So I'm going to run my check on this. Update this. Let's see what my error is. Okay, so to troubleshoot this, first I'm going to check my style. Okay, so in here I've left out a number. Okay, so that was the error that was on my CSS. Simple fix. So when you have issues like this with your CSS or in MonTap, you want to go back and make sure that you checked and that you put this in correctly. All right, so now we'll check and see the change here. We'll have changes to our areas that we specified. All right, so we're finished with the MonTap portion of our lab, our discussion. And so you'll make sure that you submit this, then go back over to Blackboard. All right, so in Blackboard, you'll do your discussion. So you're supposed to use your browser to locate and download the bootstrap.css file. Then you go in and open that file in a text editor and locate all the style rules with the nav-item class selector. You identify the number of style rules that use that selector, and then list all the declarations used for the selector. After that, I want you to research any alternatives to Bootstrap. Once you do that, choose one of those and write a review about it. Your review should be at least 100 words. After that, I want you to compare it to two others that your classmates have chosen, and then write a reply comparing what they have written versus what you found in your research with at least 50 words each on each post.